Okay, thanks for that, John. I might just rip into it. I've got a few slides to show. The only thing I'll say about that, the hawk didn't take the drone out. The drone still survived. So briefly, what I'm going to be talking about is, I guess, our background, farming moisture, our initial evidence of what we saw with compaction, the change required, machinery layout, also confirmation evidence, and then touching on a little bit with our variable rate integration into agriculture. And if I've got a little bit of time at the end, a little bit on shaft X. So, we farm just north of Griffith, 35 k's north of Griffith, red sandy loam type soil. I know the Western Australian guys will laugh at me mentioning sand in that, because it looks nothing like their sand, but for us it's some of it's quite sandy with dune swale country involved in that. We've been collecting yield data for 20 years, variable rate for 12 years and controlled traffic for 10 years. Last year's rainfall, we only had 131 mils in the growing season, and from April to the end of September there was only 80 mils out of 27 rain days. So not a lot of rain last year, but we still did manage to grow some profitable crops. Average rainfall is supposed to be about 400, a bit over 400 mils, and growing season 253 mils. I've got a bit of a graph that I've come up with over the years looking at accumulative rainfall. So this is, if for argument's sake, if our rainfall is 400 mils and we get 500 mils, so it's 100 mils above average, the graph will go up by 100 mils, and conversely, if it's below average by 100 mils, the graph goes down. So you see a trend over time, and certainly there's a nice upward trend there right to about 2000, and then the millennial drought kicked in, and then we're in a bit of an upswing from 2010, a little bit below average here. But the really interesting graph here is when we do the same thing with growing season rainfall. Again, we've got through this period rising growing season rainfall, through the millennial drought going down, but I guess the real kicker in that is over the last 10 years, we've only had 3 years that have been above average growing season rainfall. So we've really been growing our crops on stored moisture. And if you go back further, so from 2000 to 2018, there's only 4 periods there that have been above average rainfall growing season. So storing moisture and using moisture that we collect through the summertime is paramount to our farming system. How did we come to control traffic on our farm? Initially, we had 51-foot air seeder, 36-foot header front, 30-metre boom spray, or 100-foot boom spray. Nothing was matched up. Everything had GPS, so we were kind of controlling traffic, but nothing was matched up. We were looking at a trial, and being in the middle of the droughts, it was 2007, we wanted to get some actual data on what this fertiliser trial was going to do for us. So we got some satellite imagery done, and that actually showed us a lot more than what we were anticipating. This was 60 centimetre pixel size, and you can see here we've got every traffic line appeared in the paddock, and so this paddock was actually saying north-south, but it also showed up traffic lines that we've been previously using east-west. And as Bindi pointed out, we worked out what our wheeled traffic was, and it was 48% of the farm. And we wanted to get that down to 12 or 13%, which is what we ended up doing. Tim Newell there, when we first looked at the concept, looking at the evidence, canola roots against the edge of a paddock compared to randomly throughout the paddock. So we figured we couldn't sit on the fence forever, and for our overseas guests, that was a kangaroo. I don't think he intentionally sat on the fence, but that's how he ended up, and I guess what happens when you do sit on the fence. Just to quantify for our own mind as to what benefits we were going to see with controlled traffic, there was a lot of doubters in our area. Like I said, we're red sandy loams. People didn't think controlled traffic was going to work in our area. So I said, rightio, let's have a look at a barley crop. This is a fence line here, so this is effectively the first pass against the fence line. So you can say there's no traffic in this area. The width of the machine will limit traffic going that close. So what I did was we measured off 1/2 metre row, snapped the heads off, weighed the heads, converted that to yield per row. And so rows 1 to 24, so 1 to 24, excluding the wheel row, averaged 2.3 tonnes to the hectare, which gave us gross margin of $132 a hectare. If we look just at the wheel rows, that was 1.7 tonnes a hectare, gross margin of $47 a hectare, so there was a loss of gross margin revenue, so net revenue of $87 a hectare. And then looking at the rest of the paddock, which you could assume was consistent with the rest of the paddock, yielded 1.35 tonnes to the hectare, which is in fact what the rest of the paddock yielded. That was a loss in that particular year. 2007 was a dry year, a loss of $20 a hectare. So that's a loss of profit from these ones here of $152 a hectare. Now, if we take that over the whole, off that particular paddock, there was a loss of $20,000, and if we made that assumption over the whole farm, that was $425,000 worth of loss on the whole farm. So for us, that was, even if those figures were not quite accurate, if they were half as good, it's still definitely paid to be in the system. So, you know, quantified for us that we needed to change. So original paddock layout, they were east-west. We took out fence lines and made them 320 hectare paddocks on this particular block, and changed our sowing orientation from east-west to north-south to basically be in line with what the natural flow of the ground was doing. So the fall is from north to south when it does get occasionally wet. We do see that occasionally. There's only from there to there, there's only 4 metres of fall in 4 kilometres, so a metre in a kilometre. So yeah, we changed, converted our STX onto singles, went to a disc seeder, which has got the 3 metre centres and runs the outside wheels on the guest row. That worked fine, but we were finding on our sandy risers, we were getting a bit of power hop and we were getting bouncing on our sandy risers and causing a bit of an issue there over time. So we ended up changing to the cat. Found that it was sort of berming up on the ends of the paddock and making the edges of the paddock quite rough, so ended up going to this road track with linkage and PDO, and then that enabled us to use linkage equipment. So our row spacing with the disc is 272 mil, 44 units on 12 metres, mainly for stubble. So we didn't need the wider row. We can sow into a narrow row spacing for cover purposes. We also decided to build our own boom spray in 2009, which we still use today. There was about 800 hours, workshop hours building that thing. I guess at the time we were really happy with the Vector platform, and I guess going through the droughts we were a little bit cash strapped, so we saved a little money. And the nozzle spacing is the same as our row spacing. So yeah. I guess I remember one of the first controlled traffic conferences I went to, there was discussion on about 120 inch or 3 metres, and the importance of having everything, to fit your tram lines. Well, I can say that from my experience on our red sandy loam country is the 3 most important things is flotation, 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 in that order. The 2010 was, I guess, really testing year for our system. We were only 1 year into it in some paddocks. So that's the 3 metre centre there. Obviously, on this wide tyre, 3 metre centres there, but the flotation just helped us enormously. We would have been constantly pulling that thing out of a bog. So yeah, the flotation was highly important. Now we've got tracks on our harvester, and even the back tyres there to fit the shaft deck, they're just a little bit wider than 3 metre centres, but that's not that critical. It still fits in with what the front track's laying down, so I don't have an issue with that. The tracks are fantastic, and for the wet harvest that we had in 2016, they were a godsend. We were able to sail through without any problem. I guess the real problem that we had initially was these skinny tyres, the 380 tyres on the boom spray. They caused a lot of damage and a lot of headaches. And if somebody had told me then, you need to consider flotation when you're thinking about this, our tyre choice would have been a lot different. But so we went to 650s, and again you can see that's where the 3 metre centre line is. So it's not on 3 metre centres, it's probably about 3.2, but again, that's sitting in the tram, and if it was in exactly in the centre, it'd still be overlapping either way. So I don't see this as a big problem. Flotation is still the most important part, because this is the problem. We're making a mess with the skinny tyres and having to obviously fix up the mess. Some years where we've had heavy rainfall over the summer, the runoff down our tram lines has been a lot worse and actually created erosion on the trams compared to the rest of the paddock, purely by the speed of the water. The first bit of the water and the last bit of the water seems to do the damage, and needed to fix that up. So, yeah, look, we've got to try a few things with track renovation. The K-line, we actually did a great job of filling the ruts in, but not a very good job of smoothing the ruts out. The paddock's become very rough. So we made some modifications to try and make it a one-pass tidy-up machine. Still wasn't that good, so we ended up with a T-POS machine, and still finding that actually the best result is running this over it, then running that over it to tidy up. But again, the best thing to do is not make the mess in the first place. And I only renovate tracks if I really need to. Some lessons learnt. When we got into the disc seeding setup, we wanted to know what pre-em herbicides we could use in our system. So with our agronomist, set up a few trials with a few different pre-ems. What I really wanted to highlight here was, you can see in the Metrobus, and this is on barley, there's a spot here that is really set back from the pre-em, yet there's no damage at all. And that was a previous traffic line. So why did that previous traffic line cause a bit of damage? Well, the water sits there. This is after 3 mils of rainfall, and water sitting there allows the roots to access the chemical over a longer period of time and causes crop damage. Evidence of old wheel tracks is on a sand rise. We saved that way, and still seeing some tracks that way. We've been doing a little bit of ripping and all sorts on that. To try and alleviate that. There's some other issues in that as well. But this was interesting. In 2010, I actually saw a benefit in my wheel tracks. It's a bit hard to see with that photo, but those old tram lines are actually a better growth, because it's the first time the crop has actually accessed any of the nutrients over the previous dry years. Because it was wet, it could actually access the soil. Evidence of old wheel tracks is occasionally still see that. And this is from the drone. You can see, 90 degrees. Wheels promote weeds. This was 2010 was a very wet harvest for us, barley crop flat on the deck. And at that point in time, our harvester wasn't very well set up to handle stubble and redistribute it over the paddock. The harvester we've got now has got a straw chopper and really good spreaders, really good residue management, which is paramount. You can see here, I wasn't quite happy on this side here with the stubble or with the residue covering the full width, so I made an adjustment to my chopper, jumped back in, sailed away, and I thought, that's no better, that's worse. I actually engaged the stationary knives the wrong way. And then checked it and fixed it. So, it is possible to get stubble to go 12 metres. Benefits of permanent wheel tracks when it's too wet. They do actually end up being a bit of a channel for water to exit the paddock, and when it's dry, they do crack up, which is quite interesting because red sandy loams don't have a lot of shrink swell, but you compact them and they do crack. And that's actually a bit of a benefit I see of getting water back infiltrating into the soil when we do get rain. So CTF benefits, we can sow on marginal moisture, no dust tie-up when we're spraying, soil remains softer, better water infiltration except when it's absolutely chock-a-block full, like 2016. The tracks are harder and can remove the water off the paddock. That was quite incredible that year to actually be able to spray through wet areas in the paddock like that, and something the first time I did I was very nervous about doing, but gained a bit of confidence and didn't actually bog the boom spraying any crops. So yeah, this is our matching up our widths, 12 metres cedar harvester. The auger's long enough to reach into that onto the tracks. And our spreader, we use a urea boom and tow around the air cart, and we've got a weeder on 12 metres system. So looking at trials, CTF makes trials really easy to quantify. Nitrogen's been a big thing now that from 2010, a few wetter years, we've worked out what we can do. You can see here there's a strip there that we had a little bit of urea left over after sowing, and just went out with the planter and just ran it out, and basically increased the yield from 2.8 tonnes a hectare to 3.6 tonnes a hectare. So gross margin from $370 to $450 a hectare. Had a few nil strips in here as well, and let's say nil fertiliser completely, which was 2.3 tonnes per hectare, so quite an improvement. So I guess that motivated us to get something that was highly accurate. Urea boom, we utilised that with our air cart. Urea is still the cheapest form of N. Urea boom has a very accurate distribution. You can see, being 12 metres, we not quite getting the outside, but it's an interesting trial to leave that out just to sort of see without nitrogen. The air cart, it's another use for the air cart. It's all variable rate. We can use multiple products, urea, sulphate of ammonia if we're top dressing canola. Accurate in windy conditions, and with our soils are a little bit acidic, so they're generally 5 pH winter soils. We basically, as soon as the crop's up, we'll go spreading, not worried about volatilisation, because it doesn't happen in the winter time with urea, we've found. And James Hunt can back that up. Looking at, I wanted to show this slide because it's quite interesting. This is a sand rise here. This was done in 2009. We looked at a manure trial and a lime trial. And you can see that there's slight yield increases with manure and lime, and decrease in profit. But the real standout for me was this, because this was the first year that we'd sown north-south. So this is actually the tractor from the sowing machine causing reduced biomass there. But the manure actually masked that and enabled the plants to grow through the compaction and actually yield every bit as good as the rest of the paddock. So then we looked at, manure over the whole paddock wasn't going to pay as well. How about we just look at these sandy rises? So this is over 3 different years. There's a big sandy rise through here, and it shows up in all these yield maps. Generally yielding about 1.5 tonnes a hectare there. You can see the average yield here was probably about 2.5 tonnes, about 2.7 there, and over the far side it was about 3 tonnes. So they're always poor performing. What we ended up doing was, sands don't tend to tiller as well with the plant, so we doubled the seeding rate and also doubled our nitrogen application, and we actually increased yield on these sand rises quite significantly. So instead of doing 1.5, I was doing probably about 3 tonnes a hectare there. Lupins in that same paddock in 2015. Lupins love sandy soils, anywhere between 2 and 4 tonnes a hectare there. Following year, 2016, was a massively wet year, and we'd got our variable rate nitrogen on before the big wet really set in. These are basically flooded out patches, and but these sand rises here were yielding between 4 and 5.5 tonnes a hectare, which was just astounding. Chaff decks. Yeah, I'm a big fan of chaff decks in our system. We were doing a little bit of windrow burning for ryegrass management, and we've now been able to get away from doing that. It's always ready to go system, so whether there's ryegrass problem in the paddock or not, it's there to go. There's a few other benefits that it does open up, but I just wanted to quickly show you what it's been doing. So there's a little bit of ryegrass that's been germinating on the tram lines with the chaff deck, but there's also, it's not just ryegrass. So this is in vetch. That's a bit of mustard there. That's a bit of poppy there. It's a bit of double G or spiny emmix. I'm not too keen on that one ending up on the tracks, but funnily enough, that's ended up there. So I just, to conclude, I guess take-home messages, farming moisture is what we're about, and as other speakers have alluded to as well. Flotation is highly important, I believe, in our soils, so that's an important consideration. Harvest residue management starts at the harvester with a chopper, and I think every harvester should come standard with a chopper, a decent chopper and good spreaders. Makes on-farm trials highly quantifiable and accountable and easy, and I believe there's more profit in a CTF system. Thank you.